I smelled the smoke before I saw the crowd. Cheap charcoal, yard sale coffee, and the kind of perfumes folks buy at drugstores when they think it'll hide their sweat. My boots crunched the gravel as I pulled the Harley into the driveway, engine grumbling low like it already sensed something was off. It was Saturday morning, too early for strangers to be picking through my life. I killed the engine, and the sudden silence hit me harder than any punch. That's when I saw her, Emily, standing behind a folding table stacked with old junk I hadn't touched since my wife died. She was smiling politely, doing that nervous thing where she tucks her hair behind her ear. She never got that from me. I swung a leg off the bike. "Em," I called out, "what the hell is all this?" She hesitated just long enough to piss me off. "Dad, we needed to clear space. Stuff's been collecting dust for years." I scanned the tables, old tools, boxes of club patches, photo frames, a few things that belonged to my wife. A cold pulse tightened behind my ribs. "Where's your mother's jacket?" I asked. Emily froze. A customer, a lanky guy with a sunburned nose and eyes too curious for comfort, walked by holding something black over his shoulder. My stomach dropped as I recognized the familiar shape of worn leather, faded patches along each sleeve. The jacket. Her jacket. I pushed past the crowd. "Hey!" I barked. The man turned, surprised, holding the jacket like it was nothing more than a thrift store coat. Like it wasn't the last piece of my wife that still carried her shape, her road dust, her damn scent if you breathed in deep enough. "That jacket's not for sale," I growled. He lifted his hands, shrugging. "Lady said $3. I already paid." $3? My vision tunneled. My hands curled into fists. Emily rushed between us. "Dad, please. I didn't know it meant that much to you." I stared at her, disbelief burning hotter than anger. "You didn't know? That jacket rode through 27 states. That jacket held your mother the night she went down in Nevada. How the hell didn't you know?" The buyer backed away, muttering something about returning it, but the damage was done. Emily's eyes glistened, and I hated myself for causing that look, but I hated the empty hangar in the garage more. By the time the man handed the jacket back and hurried off, my blood felt like it was boiling. Emily tried to explain. Rent was tight, the basement was overflowing. She thought I wouldn't care. But she was wrong. She had no idea how wrong. I didn't raise my voice again, didn't need to. I just took the jacket, slung it over my arm, and walked inside. The house felt colder than usual, shadows deeper somehow. I tossed the jacket across the couch, but even then I couldn't take my eyes off it. The patches she sewed herself, the rip along the right cuff from that bar fight outside Tucson. Each memory punched me in the chest. I poured 2 fingers of whiskey, my evening ritual. Not a morning one, but today begged for it. I drank it standing up, staring at the hall closet, at the footlocker inside it, my wife's footlocker. It had stayed locked since the day she died. I told myself it was out of respect, but truth was, I was scared of what I might find. Old demons, old names, things better left buried in the desert where we used to ride. But selling her jacket for $3 damn, that felt like a sign, or a warning. I walked to the closet, pulled out the metal box, and set it on the kitchen table. The lock was small, easy to break. One twist of a screwdriver and it snapped. Inside were folded photographs, a few letters, and buried beneath everything else, a thick envelope sealed with red wax. My breath caught at the sight of her handwriting. To be opened only after my death. I sat down slow. The chair creaked under me. I held the envelope like it might burn through my hands. Why the hell hadn't I seen this before? Did she hide it from me? Or did she trust that someday, on the right day, I'd finally be man enough to open it? Outside, people laughed and haggled over junk that didn't matter. But in that kitchen, time stood still. The house felt like a church or a tomb. I slid my thumb under the flap, breaking the wax. Inside was her real will, not the one the lawyer gave us, not the one I'd signed. This one was handwritten, sharp, deliberate, and the first sentence stopped my heartbeat cold. "If you're reading this, then the truth has finally found you." The second sentence hit harder. "The jacket must stay with you. No one else." I felt the air leave my lungs. Not just sentimental then, not just memories. A warning. And suddenly I understood. Emily hadn't just sold a jacket for $3. She'd put something dangerous into the world, something my wife had died trying to keep buried. I read the first line of that letter 5 times before the meaning finally settled in my bones. The truth has finally found you. My wife never used words lightly. She wrote like she rode, direct, no wasted motion, no apologies. If she said truth was coming for me, then it damn well was. The kitchen felt too small, too quiet. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. I unfolded the rest of her will with hands that weren't as steady as I liked to pretend. The pages smelled faintly of leather and old paper, her smell. the same scent that used to linger in our bed long after she'd slipped out for early rides. For a moment I had to close my eyes because for half a heartbeat it felt like she was standing behind me again. But ghosts don't breathe, and memories don't warm your neck. When I opened my eyes, the words hit me like a steel boot to the ribs. I kept things from you, things I should have told you before we married, before Emily was born, before the accident. Some of it you won't want to hear, some of it you may already suspect. I swallowed hard. Yeah, I suspected plenty, not specifics, but shadows. My wife came into my life with a past she refused to explain. Back then, I was young and stupid enough to think love could bury anything, but the older I got, the more those silences gnawed at me. There were nights she woke up sweating, whispering names that didn't belong to any friend I knew. Nights she sat alone on the back porch, staring into the dark like someone out there was staring back. I turned the page. Before I met you, I rode with the Iron Vipers. Not as a property girl, as one of them, as equal as they allowed any woman to be. You weren't supposed to know that. The club you're with now, your brothers, believe the Vipers are a story from the past, but they aren't. They're still out there, and some of them never forgave me for leaving. My jaw clenched. The Iron Vipers had been ghosts for years. Rumors passed around campfires and backroom bars. A rogue club, outlaw even by outlaw standards. Their colors hadn't been seen on highways in over a decade, at least not openly. I kept reading. When I left, I didn't leave empty-handed. I took something that belonged to a man named Roper Kell. He'd kill for it then, and he'd kill for it now. And if you're reading this, it might mean he finally found a trail. My grip tightened on the paper until the edges crumpled. Roper Kell. I hadn't heard that name in 20 years, but every story attached to it ended in blood. The kind of man who didn't forgive, didn't forget, and didn't stop hunting. My eyes drifted to the leather jacket on the couch. Suddenly the weight of it felt heavier, like it wasn't cloth and stitching, it was a vault. A secret my wife stitched shut and trusted me to protect without ever telling me what I was protecting. "The jacket stays with you," she wrote. Inside the lining, left side near the ribs, I sewed something only Kell and I knew existed. If Emily ever touches it, they'll come for her next. And if Kell gets it, everything you and I built will burn. My heart thudded against my sternum. I stood up so fast the chair scraped a scar into the linoleum. Jesus Christ, Emily had sold it. For $3. To some stranger with two sharp eyes and a gait that didn't match a simple bargain hunter. My wife's next words twisted the knife deeper. I didn't tell Emily any of this. She wouldn't understand. And I didn't want her dragged into a life she never chose. Protect her, no matter what it costs you. I ran a hand over my face, scraping my beard. I'd done a lot of things in my life, some loud, some quiet and unclean, but I always swore I'd keep Emily clear of the dirt. My wife must have known I'd fail if she told me the full truth. Maybe she feared I'd go looking for Kell myself, and she would have been right. There was more. If this letter reaches you, there's money set aside. Hidden. Not to spend, to run if you must, or to bury someone if it comes to that. The bank statements in this envelope are real. The lawyer never saw them. I pulled out the statements. My hands stopped cold when I saw the numbers. She'd saved more than I earned in 3 years with the club. Quietly. Secretly. Preparing for something she expected to come eventually. Preparing for this. Preparing for me to fail her. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The betrayal wasn't hers. It was mine. She'd lived in fear for years because of decisions I never pushed her to explain. Because I was too arrogant to see that her nightmares weren't about the past. They were warnings about the future. The last line in her will carved itself into me. If Roper Kell finds you, don't negotiate. Don't forgive. Don't let him speak my name. End it. I folded the will slowly, carefully, like it was the last fragile piece of her I had left. The jacket stared at me from across the room, the stitches along its side suddenly looking suspicious as hell. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. Running my fingers along the ribside seam, I felt something stiff beneath the lining, a strip of fabric, thicker than the rest. I pressed harder. There, something thin, something flat, something hidden. But I didn't cut it open, not yet. My wife had reasons, damn good ones, to keep it sealed. If Kell was still alive, still hunting, then cutting into that lining without knowing who was watching could have painted a target on the house, and on Emily. I poured another drink, this time something stronger. The whiskey hit the back of my throat like fire, but it didn't burn away the dread crawling under my skin. Emily came inside a few minutes later, wiping her face, trying to act normal. She froze when she saw the footlocker open, the will on the table, the jacket in my hands. "Dad, what's going on?" I wanted to tell her everything. Hell, I wanted to hug her, tell her she didn't do anything wrong, that she couldn't have known, but the truth wasn't safe yet. Not for her. Not for anyone. Emily, I said softly, who'd you sell the jacket to? Did he tell you his name? She blinked. No, he didn't say much. Just asked if the jacket came with patches originally because the stitching looked torn out. My blood went cold. He noticed the stitching. She continued, unaware of the storm building behind my eyes. He paid exact change. $3. Didn't even haggle. Why? Why? Because the past never stays buried. Because the dead never stay quiet. Because my wife warned me this day would come, and I'd been too blind to see the horizon darkening. I looked down at the will's final line again. Don't let him speak my name. Whoever bought that jacket wasn't just passing through. He wasn't a shopper. He was a scout. And he was working for Roper Kell. I stood up, slipped the jacket over my shoulders, and felt the weight of my wife's secret settle against my ribs. Emily, I said, voice steady, lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. I need to go find a man. Her eyes widened. Dad, what are you talking about? What man? I didn't answer. Some truths had to be carried alone. When I stepped outside, the sky looked darker than it should have for that hour. The kind of sky that warned riders to stay off the road. But I swung my leg over the Harley anyway. The engine roared to life like an old friend ready for violence. I wasn't just hunting the buyer. I was hunting the past my wife died trying to bury. The Harley thundered beneath me as I tore down the county road, the wind clawing at my face like an old enemy trying to remind me it still had teeth. The jacket, her jacket, clung to my shoulders as if it knew the stakes better than I did. The weight of the hidden secret pressed against my ribs with every bump in the asphalt. It wasn't heavy, but it felt like a damn anchor, dragging me backward into a past I'd never gotten the full story on. The stranger who bought the jacket left a trail a rookie could follow. I didn't decide to hunt him. The decision was already made the second I read my wife's will. It wasn't rage pushing me. It was duty, guilt, and something darker that I had spent years trying to bury beneath club loyalty and the hum of engines. Emily? She couldn't know what was coming. Hell, I barely knew myself. I stopped first at the old gas station on Route 17, the one with the broken neon sign and the clerk who never forgets a face. The air smelled like diesel, hot rubber, and bad choices. Familiar scents that wrapped around me like old leather. The clerk looked up, adjusting his grimy ball cap. Haven't seen you in a while, Hawk. I hadn't used that road name in years. Hearing it again felt like someone scraping rusted metal along my spine. But I didn't correct him. You see a tall guy come through earlier? Sunburned nose? Wore a flannel shirt and boots too clean to belong to a real rider. The clerk scratched his chin. Bought smokes? Asked if this road still led to Greywater. Greywater? Jesus, that town wasn't on any tourist map. It wasn't even on most state maps. It was the kind of place where deals happened in barns and bodies got buried behind shuttered mines. The kind of place the Iron Vipers used to haunt before they vanished from the surface like smoke blown from a barrel. I nodded once. Thanks. As I turned to leave, he called after me, voice lowering. Careful down that way. Word is some old colors were spotted again, ones that were supposed to stay dead. My stomach tightened. Old colors, old ghosts, old enemies. I kicked the Harley to life and headed north. The ride to Greywater took me through long stretches of pine forest, the kind that swallow sound and spit out silence. I rode fast enough to make the trees blur, but my mind stayed sharp, replaying everything in my wife's letter. Her confession about the Iron Vipers, her warning about Kell, her insistence the jacket never leave my side. I always knew she was tough. Hell, she rode harder than most men in the club, but I never imagined she'd been mixed up with a group like the Vipers. And I definitely never imagined she'd stolen something from them. I wanted to be angry at her, but I couldn't. She'd taken secrets to her grave because she'd been trying to protect Emily. Protect me, maybe. And I'd failed her the second I let that jacket leave the house for pocket change. The sun dipped lower, bleeding into the tree line, casting the road in long shadows. I could feel something approaching, not physically, but spiritually. A reckoning. Greywater announced itself with a rusted sign full of bullet holes and a road that narrowed into gravel. The town was barely a skeleton. 3 bars, 1 mechanic, and a motel where the curtains didn't hide a damn thing. The bar called the Tailbone was the worst of the 3, which made it the most honest. I parked outside, killed the engine, and listened. No laughter inside. Only a low hum of voices and the clink of glasses. Men talking business, not pleasure. I pushed through the door. The air hit me like a backhand. Stale beer, cigarettes, and damp wood. The place hadn't been cleaned since the Cold War. A dozen men sat scattered around, none I recognized, but all with that look, the one you get when your job involves surviving things most folks wouldn't walk into willingly. The bartender, a big guy with tattoos of barbed wire crawling up his neck, froze when he saw me. You with the Angels still? He asked, wiping a glass that had probably never been clean. Something like that, I said. He nodded slowly, like he was processing whether my presence was good or bad news. "I'm looking for someone," I said. "Tall guy, sunburned nose, flannel shirt. Bought a black leather jacket for my daughter." The bartender set the glass down. "He already asked about you?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Asked about me?" "Yeah, wanted to know where you drink, who you ride with, if you still take the North Highway home. He left maybe 20 minutes before you rolled in." Cold spread through my chest. That meant the bastard wasn't just running. He was circling. "Where'd he go?" I asked. The bartender hesitated, eyes flicking to the corner table. I followed his gaze. 3 men sat there, hunched over beers, their cuts turned inside out to hide the patches, but not well enough. I'd know that serpent logo anywhere. Iron Vipers. My blood went hot. One of them, bigger than the others, scar splitting his left eyebrow, leaned back in his chair, smirking. "You're late, Hawk," he said in a gravelly voice. "We've been expecting you." My jaw clenched, but I stayed still. "Where's the man who bought the jacket?" I asked. The scarred man chuckled. "You mean Jax? He's just the courier. Poor bastard probably didn't even know you'd track him this fast." "So where is he?" The man took a slow drink, savoring the moment like a wolf playing with food before the kill. "He's gone to deliver something Kel's been wanting back for damn near 15 years. My stomach twisted. They knew. They knew the jacket held it. "And what's that?" I asked, voice low. His smirk widened. "You really don't know? Your old lady never told you?" "She told me enough," I said. He laughed. "No, Hawk. She didn't tell you a damn thing." One of the other Vipers reached beneath the table. I heard the scrape of metal. I didn't wait. I flipped the table nearest me and dove behind it as a bullet cracked past my ear. Glass shattered. Men shouted. Chairs scraped as the bar erupted into chaos. The Harley outside suddenly felt a world away. I drew the knife I kept strapped inside my boot, steel I trusted more than any firearm in close quarters, and lunged forward as the second Viper rose. I slammed him into the wall hard enough to rattle old beer signs, then drove the blade into his thigh to keep him down. The scarred leader charged me, tackling me onto a table that groaned under our weight before snapping in half. We hit the floor. He threw a punch that clipped my jaw, sharp enough to ring my skull, but I'd taken worse from brothers who loved me. I countered with a headbutt that split his lip. Blood splattered across my wife's jacket. Her blood had stained it once, now another bastard's joined it. Before he could recover, I pressed the knife to his throat. "Where's Jax?" I growled. "Where's he taking the jacket?" He spit blood in my face. "To Kel. Back to Kel, where it belongs." I pushed the blade harder until he choked. "Where?" "Ridgepoint," he gasped. "Old sawmill. Kel waits there." I froze. Ridgepoint. The place where my wife nearly died 7 years before Emily was born. The place she never spoke about. The place she may have stolen everything from. I knocked the man out cold and rose, breathing hard, ribs aching, hands trembling with adrenaline and something darker. The bartender stared at me, wide-eyed. "You walk out that door," he said. "You don't come back the same." I wiped the blood from my cheek. "I'm not coming back at all," I said. "Not until this ends." I stepped out into the night, climbed onto my Harley, and felt the ghost of my wife pressing her palm to my back, like old times. The past wasn't hunting me. The past was waiting for me, at Ridgepoint, at the sawmill, with a man I should have killed years ago. And he had her secret now, unless I got there first. Ridgepoint sat at the end of a forgotten road, one long stretch of cracked asphalt curling like a black tongue into the woods. I rode it alone, the Harley's engine growling under me like it sensed where we were heading and didn't approve. The air grew colder the closer I got, thick with pine and old ghosts. By the time the sawmill came into view, a hulking skeleton of rusted metal and rotting wood, the sun was gone. A full moon carved silver slashes through the trees, lighting up the yard where generations of men once worked before everything turned to quiet ruin. Now it was a grave, and Kel had chosen it as the place to end things. I parked behind a stack of decaying pallets, killed the engine, and let the silence settle in. Somewhere inside the mill, the man who haunted my wife's nightmares was waiting, with the courier, with the jacket, with whatever the hell she'd sewn into its lining. I touched the leather one last time. It felt like her hand used to, steady, warm, stubborn as hell. "All right, girl," I murmured. "Let's finish this." I moved toward the mill, boots silent on the damp earth. The huge sliding door was cracked open just enough for light to spill out, a harsh orange glow flickering like firelight. Voices murmured inside. 2 men, maybe 3. One was complaining. The other had a slow drawl full of authority and rot. Kel. I slipped through the gap, keeping low. The interior looked like a cathedral stripped for parts. Wooden beams stretched up like ribs, half-eaten by time. Shadows clung to every corner, and right in the center of that dead place stood Roper Kell, older than I expected, but still built like a man who'd survived too many wars. Thick shoulders, gray hair pulled back. His viper's cut hung loose, but the eyes, those pale, dead eyes, hadn't aged a day since the stories were told. Jax, the courier, knelt in front of him. His flannel was torn, face bruised. The jacket lay on the floor beside them, the lining already sliced open. My heart hardened into a stone. Kell held something between two fingers, a small plastic-wrapped packet, barely thicker than a playing card. Whatever it was what my wife died protecting. Jax trembled. I swear, man, I didn't know they'd follow... Kell kicked him in the stomach, dropping him flat. You had one job, Kell said calmly. Bring me the relic. But you didn't mention you were being tailed by her husband. Her husband? Not my name, not my road name, just a title tethered to a woman he'd never gotten over losing. I stepped out of the shadows. That's because he wasn't being tailed, I said. He was being hunted. Kell turned slowly, smiling like a wolf who'd just been offered dessert. Hawk, he said, savoring it. I figured you'd come. She always said you were loyal, stupidly loyal. She said plenty about you, I replied. Most of it involved bullets. He laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the mill. Your wife stole something from me, something I bled for, and she paid for it. Now you're here to pay the rest. I nodded at the packet in his hand. What is it? He lifted it to the light. Inside was a tiny memory chip, old tech but valuable in the right hands. A ledger, he said. Names, roots, payoffs, our entire history. Everything the Vipers built. Your little angel stole it before she ran from us. I should have hunted her then, but I thought she'd break. She never did. My stomach twisted. My wife didn't steal money. Didn't steal drugs. She stole blackmail, leverage, something that could destroy the Vipers permanently. She kept it to protect Emily, I said. To protect me. Kell snorted. She kept it because she was afraid. She knew if this resurfaced, we'd all come calling. He stepped toward me, slow and deliberate. You think she left you because of the accident? You think she died without secrets? He shook his head. She died running from her past, and you never even knew it. I felt something shift inside me, like a dam cracking. Guilt, grief, anger, love. It all churned together into a storm. She trusted me with the truth, I said. She trusted me to finish what she started. Kell smiled. Then finish it. He tossed the packet toward me. As I caught it, he drew a pistol. I dove behind a pillar just as the first shot cracked through the mill, splintering wood inches from my head. The blast echoed like thunder. I rolled, grabbed a fallen board, and hurled it to distract him. Kell fired again, cursing. Jack screamed and scrambled away, dragging himself toward cover. I moved fast, low, letting instinct take over. Years of riding, years of fighting. Muscle memory is a powerful thing. My wife used to say, violence lived in my bones. Tonight I let it out. Kell stalked between the beams, gun raised. His steps were careful. Too careful. I waited for the hesitation. When he paused, listening for my breath, I stepped out behind him and slammed the barrel of his own rifle, lying abandoned near a tool rack, into the back of his knee. He dropped with a roar. I tackled him, sending us both crashing into the dirt. We fought like animals. No rules, no hesitation, just teeth, fists, weight, and will. His elbow cracked against my jaw. I saw stars. He reached for the gun. I grabbed his wrist and twisted until it snapped. He screamed, wild and vicious, swinging blindly with his other fist. I drove my head into his nose, felt cartilage break, felt blood spray. He bucked me off with surprising strength, rolling to his feet. He lunged with a knife he'd hidden in his boot. But I'd known that trick long before he taught it to my wife. I caught his wrist, twisted, and plunged the blade into his shoulder. He staggered, choking on his own rage. She was mine, he spat. She was ours. She left us for you. No, I said, grabbing him by the collar. She left you for herself. I slammed him against a beam. The knife slipped deeper. And she stayed with me because she chose to. Something you never understood. Kell's knees buckled. He reached for my throat, desperate, pathetic. A dying animal refusing to accept the end. I leaned in close. She told me not to let you speak her name, I whispered. So this is as far as you go. I twisted the blade. Roper Kell collapsed, breath rattling out like a broken engine dying on the highway. His eyes stayed open even after the life left them. I stood over him, chest heaving. My wife's jacket soaked in blood. His blood, not hers. Not this time. Jax crawled out from behind a crate, bleeding, but alive. Is he dead? Yeah, I said. And he's staying that way. I picked up the packet from where I'd dropped it. The chip looked harmless, too small to hold so much destruction. "What are you going to do with it?" Jax asked. I slipped it into the lining of the jacket, where it belonged only long enough for me to finish what needed finishing. "Burn it," I said. "End everything that brought us here." Jax nodded. "Your wife. She was brave." "She was," I said softly. He limped away into the trees. Not my problem anymore. I walked out of the mill. The moon was high. The night smelled like pine and blood and endings. Back at the Harley, I took the chip, placed it on the ground, and crushed it beneath my boot. Sparks flicked. Plastic cracked. The past died with it. As I rode home, the jacket hugged my ribs, lighter now, as if she were finally letting go. I knew what I had to tell Emily. I knew it would hurt, but the truth, finally, was mine to give. And vengeance. Vengeance was finished.